They're a world-class Navy and they're a world-class Air Force with all the advanced capabilities of a. So this tactical action that you see around Scarborough Shoal or Second Thomas Shoal or other places, that's all she's doing, and we have to acknowledge where the accountability lies. Now, China has done more to actually strengthen alliances and create coalitions than any one country. The Chinese, I think, weakness is their ability to trust their people to make the right decisions in a fluid, highly dynamic environment. The Chinese are very autistic with regard to seeing their own, culpability in creating this dynamic. They are the genesis story. They are patient zero. If China did not grow this massive military and start threatening to annex, Taiwan and assimilate it as part of their rejuvenation, if they didn't take Hong Kong and kill a democracy there in Hong Kong, then you wouldn't have to worry about Taiwan building up its defensive capabilities and getting closer to the United States. It would never have occurred.
Hi everyone. Today our guest is Rear Admiral Mike Studeman. Welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you, Richard. I look forward to your questions. They're always on target, and I think we're going to have a good dialogue.
Thank you very much. I have to say I'm a huge admirer of your speech last February at the conference, your speech titled An Intelligence Officer's Perspective on China. I found it absolutely amazing, fantastic.
Thank you.
Connecting on that, I wanted to ask you about your new book, because you wrote the book Might of the Chain. And I wanted to ask you, it's been released this year, I wanted to ask you first why you have written it, and second, how can military experience be applied to civilian lives?
Yeah, thanks. I wrote this book here, Might of the Chain. I'm proud of it, and I hope other people are able to pick it up. I tried to tell stories, and they're short, to the point, with executive takeaways, but I describe a leadership challenge in the United States. Don't take my word for it. If you take a look at Gallup polls and other polls that have been done, there's a lack of trust in American leaders by Americans. Only 20% trust their leaders. 80% of the people polled admit that there is a leadership crisis in government and in corporate America. 60% of people polled essentially said, I don't see any leaders in my organization that I aspire to. And if you take a look at the amount of support or trust in Congress, you're in like single digit numbers here. Only 1 in 3 trust the mass media. We have a leadership crisis in the country. And as I transitioned out of the military, I thought, look, I've got something to offer. I learned from many other great leaders during my time in the uniform. How do I share these insights with others so they can revitalize this essential skill? I believe that wise, sage, enlightened, inspiring leadership has always been what has made America great. And so the question is, where do we find leaders who are willing to be of that ilk, who are going to be principled, who are going to operate from a strong moral foundation, who are going to use facts and who are going to be honest with the American people and really inspire us to achieve and advance things that we need to as a society, particularly in the face of division and fragmentation. Where are these great leaders? Because you look around and you go, I don't see as many as I know we need. And so I wanted to do my part, do my duty, and provide some tips on how to refresh our leadership competencies in the United States. There's a lot at stake when you consider what's happening internal in the country, and then these large threats and forces outside of our country that mean to do us harm.
So your audience is very broad, both military, civilians, and corporate, yes?
It is anyone. I fear that many older Americans are set in their ways. I haven't lost hope with them, but I think the chances of them changing their behavior are less, likely than younger professionals. So I hope everybody reads it, but I put my stock in those who are in school, who are young professionals, who are in their 20s and 30s, to say, look, our generation has led us to a place which has really bridled the nation, has led to this polarization and gridlock. I hope that you learn about how leadership should be exercised, and maybe when you are in positions of leadership and power, that you'll help course correct and get things on the right track.
I have to say, I have few friends who served in uniformed services or had jobs with the police or military, and what I noticed, the skills they have is usually they are very well organized and disciplined. What do you think that civilians could most of all take over from, let's say, from the military way of life or organization or something like that?
Yeah, I do think having a clarity of what you want to achieve. People have vision statements, but more importantly, you need to have your strategy figured out. You need to be able to get your ways and your means, connected. Those are the mechanics of things. But when I talk about what's more important than those typical things that maybe business cares about, it is the importance of character, right? It's the importance of ethics, the importance of accountability, the importance of civility and how you carry yourself. Are you a model example of a good leader, or do people have to plug their nose every time they, see a leader talk, speak, or act? And so these fundamental truths about where good leadership rests its power, it is usually on a strong foundation of character and integrity. That's why my book, the subtitle is Forging Leaders of Iron Integrity.
One more question, because I usually listen to books. Will there be an audio version?
Yes, in fact, I am figuring out my microphone and all the rest, and I will try to knock that out. Somebody asked me very early on LinkedIn whether or not I would do an audio book because one of their relatives is blind, and that immediately convinced me that I should do it. And so it was a yes almost from the very beginning.
Thank you very much. That's great. Good. The second topic I wanted to ask you is your assessment of the PLA Navy and Air Force, because there's a huge discussion: how capable are they? How well prepared are they? So, what's your take on that?
They're a world-class Navy and they're a world-class Air Force with all the advanced capabilities of a major power. I believe that they are a peer in many respects. In some areas, they're an inferior. In some areas, they're superior. But overall, they're a peer power and they're a leading military on the planet. And people forget, the United States military is more superior in many different ways globally because we have an ability to reach into the far corners of the earth. At the same time, the flashpoints that are of greatest concern are right near China, and so that becomes a moot point. In fact, this idea of logistics and how to support an away, fight is a very complicated thing. If you've got the near fight where you can benefit from interior lines, then you have significant inherent advantages. So you add that with a world-class military in every respect, then you have a challenge. I would say that, look, when it comes to the experience base, we did have many years of combat, but that was not high intensity major power war with nuclear dimensions, right? So that carries over and that will benefit the United States in many ways, and we're highly proficient in the missions that we perform. The Chinese, I think, weakness is their ability to trust their people to make the right decisions in a fluid, highly dynamic environment. The hierarchy, this conformist way that they have operated in their lives and kowtowing to their chain of command hasn't created an ability for many of these Chinese leaders to be able to operate with confidence and with initiative in those kinds of complex environments. And that's where I think Xi Jinping understands his PLA is not fully ready. He's correct. I think it would be the difference maker in any kind of fight.
And I think there is also the corruption and the recent purges in the last recent years. So I think that's also, it doesn't also speak really well of them, right?
I think that's a way of life. The Chinese have weaponized corruption globally to co-opt business and political elites. It's just part of their being. Many societies have corruption, various levels. America had a lot of corruption in our history too, and so every society I think goes through its phases. Xi Jinping is trying to mitigate this corruption, try to clean it out. I think that's an effort that will take a very long time, if ever, to fully be achieved. But at the same time, he's trying to counteract those forces, which I do agree are inherent weaknesses in the PLA, as they are in business and other sectors of the Chinese society.
Dear viewer, this important video deserves wider exposure. Please help me fight algorithm suppression by liking, commenting, and sharing it widely. Together we will make a difference.
Thank you. The second huge discussion that's been going on is whether the PLA would attack Taiwan or not, or as many experts say, that the Chinese are too sophisticated and that they would rather try to subvert Taiwan. How do you see it?
Well, I see that the strategic issues are the most important ones to start. Sometimes people begin below and they start taking a look at a tactical action like a drone showing up on the east side of Taiwan, or more median line crossings with fighters and things like that. I think people need to reset. Let's talk about the strategic political issue. The strategic political issue is that the Chinese believe that Taiwan is becoming slowly, inexorably more independent in its attitudes about itself, its self-identity, and they see Taiwan moving closer to the United States, and they are very concerned about trying to arrest a negative trend, right? And so this issue of whether or not the status quo is there. Nobody thinks that the status quo is actually serving them well, because it's drifting away in the Chinese mind from control. They were trying to bring in Taiwan, slowly assimilate it economically and in other ways. And in fact, the trend line's gone the opposite direction because of Chinese behavior. The Chinese are very autistic with regard to seeing their own, culpability in creating this dynamic. They are the genesis story. They are patient zero. If China did not grow this massive military and start threatening to annex, Taiwan and assimilate it as part of their rejuvenation, if they didn't take Hong Kong and kill a democracy there in Hong Kong, then you wouldn't have to worry about Taiwan building up its defensive capabilities and getting closer to the United States. It would never have occurred. So the Chinese are actually to blame for the crisis. They can't see themselves as the problem, which is a perception issue, which we have to struggle with. And they are trying to influence things in the near term while they don't have currently a capability to actually outright physically take Taiwan. So you don't just sit around on your hands if you see something developing in a negative way with your core sovereignty issue. So they're trying to use these gray zone tactics and other levers, their economic ones, their diplomatic and informational ones, to try to shape the politics on Taiwan. They want to show the cost of the Taiwan people electing the Democratic Progressive Party leaders, right, in a way that suggests that Taiwan is going to be better off under the more independence-minded leaders. The whole idea is you show that there is a definitive price to be paid if you're going to support those kind of people in the DPP. And so you're going to feel that economically, you're going to feel from information means, and you're going to feel it from this anaconda-like pressure that China has placed all around Taiwan, so that you exhaust Taiwan's energy and time, you demoralize, and you show that you can encircle and potentially you bring the hammer down on Taiwan at a moment's notice. This is the psychological play that is currently in works, right? And it's fundamentally a political issue. So people are worried about offshore island takeovers and a bunch of other different things, and those may, in fact, be executed if China thinks it needs to send a strong strategic or political signal, right, to shock Taiwan, shock the United States into backing off of whatever trend things are moving toward. So those remain concerns, but you can't look at this solely with regard to the physical military elements. It has to always be couched in strategic political context.
Then I have also a follow-up question. Why isn't any military responding reciprocally to PLA's provocations? Because they've been provoking US forces, Australian forces, all kind of different nations. So I'm wondering, for example, why doesn't the US send a balloon over China? Why is it only the West reacting to China's behaviors, never kind of making the first move or somehow reciprocating?
Yeah, no, I think that China continues to be aggressive on that front, but it's not without a strategic price. So there may not be, you may be looking for a tactical and operational price, but where it's being paid is strategically, because most of the region and the world has been able to now see what China's rise really means. It means that when China has more hammers, everything looks like more nails to them, and so they're tempted. They're tempted to use heavy-handed tactics to try to get their way. They're encouraged by Xi Jinping, who knows what advice he's getting, but he thinks that he can just power through and might is right and all the rest. And meanwhile, the world's taking a look, going, "You're scaring me, Beijing. You're scaring me, Xi, and I don't trust you." And now I'm going to work closer with my neighbors and other stronger powers to counterbalance against you. So China blames the United States for forming coalitions and alliances. China has done more to actually strengthen alliances and create coalitions than any one country, because people are taking a look at it going, I could be the next victim, or I was the victim last week. And if it's not on the military side with a sovereignty claim on territory, it's an economic issue somewhere in here. And so countries are coming together. They may not be as vocal about it because they're playing it smart, but they are certainly starting to work in a way that's not going to benefit China in the long run. And so I do think that you have to play it smart. The United States, if we're going to support international law and the rules-based system and a free and open Pacific, we need to act that way and set the right example always, right? Two wrongs don't make it right. And we'll have to see how all these forces shape China into modifying its behavior. And if it doesn't, frankly, you're probably headed towards not only skirmishes, but you're headed to a great power war.
Okay, so where do you see then the Chinese-Filipino tensions going next? Like, would it get worse, or is there now kind of peace? Would it continue the way it is?
Yeah, no. So this goes all the way back to Xi Jinping encouraging his Coast Guard to assert its illegitimate, illegal, claims over the South China Sea. This is your dear leader, your party chairman, your general secretary, your Central Military Commission chairman, essentially saying, Coast Guard, you go, boys. You defend every inch of the South China Sea as if it's Chinese, which is not. And so what is the Coast Guard going to do? They're going to follow the big man's orders, and they're going to do everything in their power to follow that guidance. And so this tactical action that you see around Scarborough Shoal or Second Thomas Shoal or other places. That's all she's doing. And we have to acknowledge where the accountability lies. Now, there's obviously this agreement between the Philippines and China that was signed. I think China understood that they were right on the knife edge of triggering the mutual defense treaty between the United States and the Philippines. You had some injuries from those incidents with the small boats, knocking into each other, a big circus. And it was only a matter of luck and time before somebody was killed. And that would bring the United States right in. China knew it. They were dancing on a precipice with this, and finally, worked out an agreement with the Philippines to, try to stabilize the situation. So, I don't think this is the end to Chinese aggression. I think it will continue to crop up so long as it's supported by Beijing and Xi Jinping actual. And it'll be a test of the international order. In the meantime, Southeast Asia takes a look at China and says, I don't want to put my future in your hands. You see ties between the Philippines and Japan, Vietnam and Japan, Vietnam and India, the Philippines and India. You see all these microlaterals and trilaterals and multilaterals being created as a way to be able to counterbalance China's exercise of power in that region.
That's very interesting. I didn't know it was that close. So that's good to know that at least they kind of were a bit pushed back. I have a question about Taiwan because you visited the country, you've met the president. What's your takeaway from a trip to Taiwan?
Yeah, I think they're very serious about getting the capabilities that they need. They wanted to have more flow of U.S. material that were promised in our foreign military sales, and things that were slowed up due to a combination of other flashpoints like Ukraine and Israel, as well as some things in our defense industrial base. But I think that flow is going to make a significant difference. And the Taiwan side is working on, their version of a drone fleets in various domains. Think the air, the surface, subsurface. And so they're learning the lessons from Ukraine. In fact, I briefed the president and all the national security advisors a few months after the Ukraine war kicked off with lessons that China's taking away from that war and lessons that Taiwan should as well. So they're studying it very carefully, and they're trying to configure their military acquisition, training, et cetera, to be able to deal with a future fight. They understand that an inferior can paralyze a superior if done correctly. And so you see in Taiwan greater discussions about enabling the civil military cooperation. This is really important. And in fact, the Taiwan side is learning that, in fact, they need to demonstrate that there'll be a whole of society pushback against any kind of aggressive Chinese action. And so, yes, there's some in Taiwan society that wouldn't be willing to take up arms. We know that. But they're working to have 8,000 more first responders. They're connecting with an all-out defense mobilization agency, an ability to ramp up more quickly in certain areas, to get stockpiles, to be able to have more of the civilian force be able to actually resist any kind of major action, by China. It takes time to be able to get there, but they're on that path.
A follow-up question. In one of your interviews, you had very interesting observations what the US could learn from the Taiwanese. You met the Minister Audrey Tang.
Yes, she's the Ministry of Digital Affairs, and I believe that they have been able to really figure out some best practices for how to deal with a very challenging information environment. The Chinese are all over them all the time. I mean, these are thousands and thousands of, either cyber attacks or influence operations, psychological operations, disinformation, misinformation. It's all over the map. But the Chinese clearly are trying to achieve lots of different things, including much confusion and many distortions about how the Taiwan should believe in this or that event. And so, in response, the Ministry of Digital Affairs has been able to set up this architecture with other agencies to be able to pre-bunk, to be able to do instant correction, to send out 200 character clarifications within just a few hours, to be able to stop something that appears to be misinformation or disinformation from spreading. They can hold companies, social media companies liable for carrying bad information. They are able to fact check. They have more companies that are engaged in like near constant fact checking that are becoming credible, trusted sources. And they are trying to help with the digital education of their population, the digital hygiene or digital literacy is something that's really big in Taiwan. I'm going to go there in late October to learn more about their specific efforts, but they understand the threat that the information environment can generate in their society, and they're on path to be able to, deal with it in the best possible way. And America, which is so deeply riven by disinformation and misinformation, should be learning from governments like theirs.
Thank you. I have two more questions. One is about the recruitment crisis, which we think and see in many militaries. It's in Japan, in the US, even in China, in Taiwan. What can governments do about this? It seems to me maybe it's a bit related to the leadership crisis that you mentioned at the beginning. Or how do you see this?
Yeah, I mean the amount of the percentage of the American society that is actually able to qualify for being in the military is relatively small. It may only be 15 to 25% of our population that would actually qualify, even if they wanted to join. And since only 1/2 of 1% of Americans actually served in the military, and we know that's a critical influence factor people joining, is if they knew somebody in the military and respected them, heard their stories, understood what that life of noble purpose actually was when people experienced it. You have less contact time, and you have less qualified people and less knowledge about what the military life is in actuality. And so those are some of the drawbacks. I believe if you had enlightened, inspiring, principled leadership that is able to talk about the macro geodynamic forces of our time, where you are able to take a look at the threat of a Chinese, Russian, North Korea, Iran, and their client states moving closer together in a loose coalition that aims to be anti-Western in almost every respect and to reshape the world according to their preferences with spheres of influence, etc. Those are regressive, revanchist, revisionist countries, right? That are a distinct threat to our country and many of our allies and partners. If there was a U.S. leader that could describe this dynamic, this change in the overall global environment, and how the military and other sectors of society need to respond and prepare and deal with it, then I think you would find that you would have an easier time recruiting volunteers to be able to like rise to that challenge, right? If you're totally like absorbed with, hey, the greatest threat is my neighbor, is that person that has a view about this cultural issue, and you think that's like the most significant challenge of your time, then why would anybody put on a uniform, right? There has to be a higher calling, there has to be a noble purpose, there has to be something that's truly worth your time. These issues on the global stage that threaten us in so many different ways, threaten our way of life, our security, our prosperity, our values, those things need to be highlighted in the context that only great leaders tend to do, for us to eventually solve our recruitment issues. And I think Japan, if you take a look at the way they're responding to what's happening in their neighborhood, more military spending, shifting views about the importance of security. I think they're going to solve their recruitment issues, because they're actually aiming for, the truly essential challenges of their times. And we need great leaders in America who can do the same.
Dear Studio Asian, if you've gotten that far and not commented nor liked, shame on you. Also sub for more Studio Asia.
Fantastic. That's really interesting. My last question is, what will you be researching 24, 25? Is there maybe another book in the making? What's your interest now?
Yeah, I would like to do some more writing. I've been talking to some uh, outlets about writing on the Chinese degree of penetration within American society. Most people either ignore it, or it's very inconvenient to talk about how much our open society has been exploited by the Chinese. I'm talking from Hollywood to business to academia to technical company, tech companies that have intellectual property that the Chinese want. We are whistling to the graveyard with many. So I'm going to write on that topic, I think, and try to raise awareness there. I also want to write with another friend of mine on the issue of information as a hyperpower. That if you look at the diplomatic, informational, military, economic instruments of national power, that the information one is one that has exponential effects when used, for effect, and equally powerful. It can be very weakening to your society if you don't know how to use information power. I believe America hasn't figured out how to defend against information threats or to use its own information power to the greatest effect. And I want to talk about those concepts. And I also would like to maybe convert a story that I told my boys. I wrote a book for them, and I was thinking about maybe uh, publishing that perhaps. So we'll see. I haven't concluded anything yet on that score, but in general, I like to continue to speak and write and influence where I can.
Admiral, thank you so much for your time and your insights.
Thank you, Richard. Keep up the great interviews here. Hopefully, this was of value, but I really admire what you're doing with your show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think they're coming from a very sedate place, right? I mean, expecting societal, leaps into something that's 180 degrees out is not usually the case with most, societies. So you can't expect there to be an exact, quick turnaround. Is there a new awakening? Yeah. Are there a lot of people who are still hoping beyond hope, but Chinese will never fight Chinese? Absolutely. This is an important issue, though, because if, the Taiwan leaders explain things in a way that's actually more dangerous and alarmist, what they run the risk of is harming themselves strategically in a way that translates into panic and into economic investments that are going to flee the country. And so you have to, President Tsai and I talked about this, and she said she had a very challenging time to be able to get society to mobilize for its own defense without causing undue panic that would then drive people to do crazy things, which is to flee, which is to not set up businesses in Taiwan. And you have to respect that the leader understands what can happen. I mean, that can play against you here. And so, how do you manage that? And that is, taking the middle road between giving a sense of something, but not suggesting that, the Chinese are just about to like kick you in the teeth. They're pressuring. We can manage the pressure we got to work on relationships in the theater and internationally, but without creating the worst case situation where Taiwan does themselves in. You know what I'm saying? Because you can have it. You can have Taiwan take actions and stay and make statements, and you can generate some highly negative environment for them, and it's all a win for China. And so why would Taiwan do that to itself? So it's very astute in terms of how to manage that. You can argue that they're not doing enough or doing too little, and then there's an argument both sides. But at the same time, you have to empathize with the leader's position with a very fragile economy where a lot of people are wondering whether or not they should just outright abandon Taiwan.
I have so many other explosive interviews on this and similar topics. Please check out my channel.